Mark Sedra is a senior fellow for the Center for International Governance, Innovation, and is an expert on Afghanistan and international security. He joins us now from Kitchener. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Is President Bush leaving office with the situation in Afghanistan under control?
Well, certainly not. We do see that there has been a very serious deterioration of security conditions in Afghanistan. One of the more worrying aspects of this is insecurity is no longer confined to the south and east of the country, where the bulk of insurgents activity has been centered over the last few years, but is beginning to spread across the country. So certainly the situation there is much worse than it was even a few years ago.
Now, bringing more troops into the country, is something like that going to work necessarily? We've seen those kind of overtures made by the incoming administration.
Well, more troops will have a positive effect in some ways. It will allow NATO to provide havens of security where you can advance development. It will enable NATO to accelerate the training of the Afghan security forces. But merely deploying more troops and throwing them into the counterinsurgency operations is not enough. There also has to be a political approach to addressing insecurity in Afghanistan. And that means reaching out to the Taliban, reaching out to other spoiler groups to try and achieve a political settlement, because without that political settlement there will never be sustainable peace in Afghanistan.
Now, we've seen over the last week or so 6 Canadian soldiers killed in the country. What do you think NATO troops there have to do to adapt to what the Taliban is doing?
Well, they have to continue to put pressure on the Taliban. They have to focus first and foremost on creating a stable environment to provide development assistance to the Afghans. To win a counterinsurgency, you have to have the support of the local people. And the reality today is Afghans are starting to believe that momentum is on the Taliban side. That is not because they support their ideology. The majority of Afghans don't want to see the Taliban return to power, but they believe that perhaps this is inevitable, and they want to be on the right side of things when the dust settles. So NATO has to prove that, in fact, it's the Afghan government and the international community which has the commitment and the resolve to prevail in Afghanistan.
As we wait for the dust to settle, is there going to be pressure on Canada to stay beyond 2011?
Well, President-elect Obama has certainly made a strong commitment to Afghanistan in his remarks thus far. And I think that it is very conceivable that he will come to Canada and ask for a continued commitment of resources. Now, I don't necessarily think that he'll ask for Canadian troops to stay in Kandahar, but he may ask for a redeployment of Canadian troops to other areas of the country, more stable areas like Kabul or in the north or west of the country. That, to me, is entirely possible. And, of course, he is going to ask that Canada continue to make an economic and diplomatic commitment to Afghanistan for the foreseeable future, because that is just as important as the military component.
If he does ask for more Canadian soldiers to stay beyond 2011, what do you think the Canadian government's reaction should be to that?
Well, I think that, frankly, it will depend a lot on the ability of our military to actually sustain that type of commitment. I don't think it's necessarily a good idea for Canada, thinking as a Canadian, to maintain the presence in Kandahar. We've done our bit. We've been there for several years now, and it's been the most intense fighting in the country. But I think it's entirely reasonable to expect perhaps some military commitment on some level, much reduced from what it is today, in some other area of the country that is far more stable than the South.
Mark Sedra, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.